I started trying to park my car directly in front of our building so that green car guy couldn't park there. And if he did rev up his car, it'd be like slightly less loud for us. I like to think everyone else in the complex as a collective was like on the same page with me because they would also try to occupy those front spots as much as possible. Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. But if you're not familiar, my name is River, or Riv for short, and I enjoy creating artworks and drawing cartoons, and sometimes I also like to share my thoughts, tell little stories, and talk about life stuff and just my personal experiences. I'm going to be showing you guys some past sketchbooks that I did between, I want to say like 2022 and 2024 or so. And I figured it would make sense to show these since I'll be talking about some memories from around these times as well. This may be kind of all over the place, but I'll try to keep things in chronological order. I recently moved into an actual bona fide house after about a year of living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my lovely man friend Hunter and our little kitty cat Blinkasita. The year before that, Hunter lived in an even smaller apartment, and I sort of lived there half the time with him, and then the other half of the time I was still living with my family. And then before that, he also lived in another house with some roommates, and that was kind of a whole thing as well, so I thought I could talk a little about each of these places where I've lived or partially lived at, and then about the recent move we had to an actual home. So anyway, yes, I mostly just lived with my parents for most of my youth. There was one point where I had lived in an older house kind of near the downtown area for about a year, maybe a year and a half. But eventually I moved back home because that was just not working out for me, and I was also going to be closer to work again. And that's something that I never really try to take for granted necessarily. I've always really appreciated the times where I lived near my work. But over time, as you move to other areas, sometimes work gets a little further from you, which is how it is for me right now. And it's not just work, it's my family's home and other things like that, places I would go to, whether it be a store or restaurant. So I do notice it a lot more now, damn, I have to drive all this way, but even though that's the case, I try to frame it in a positive way anyway. So some of the benefits we're getting from living more in the country outweigh that part, so I'll get into that a little more later. But anyway, yeah, so I moved back in with my parents after those 2 years or so, and then I started seeing someone new, as you do, and I started making this new little buddy of mine, Hunter, and we started hanging out all the time. And when we first met, he actually lived super near my parents' house. So Hunter rented a house with his friend, another friend, that friend's girlfriend, and her child. So there were 3 adults and a kid living in that home. And there was also a little doggy and a little kitty cat as well. And I remember I actually helped bring the cat back home once by coaxing it back inside one night after it had escaped and been missing for a couple weeks already. But anyway, Hunter and I would hang out there, of course, and I remember I would sometimes want to cook a nice meal for him, but it was kind of awkward when other random people are walking around and I'm trying to hurry up and not be in the kitchen too long, but also not completely fuck up the food. Also felt a little bad because there were days I was basically working all day and I wouldn't get off until 8 p.m. or something like that. And I'd want to stop by to see Hunter, but it was already kind of late at night and I was disrupting the whole house because they had this loud ass little doorbell thing that would go off if someone opened the front door. No one ever made me feel like it was a big deal, but you know how it is. But eventually Hunter was ready to move out. He wanted his own space, so he moved into a 1-bedroom apartment that was still nearby, and that's when I kind of started halfway staying with him. I would pack a little overnight bag of clothes for a night or two, and I'd be basically going back and forth between there and my parents' house. I remember the first week I helped him move there, one of his neighbors was this sweet older lady. Her name was Miss Beverly, and I was like, okay, let me go ahead and introduce myself and stuff since Hunter's going to be living here for at least a year, and we should get to know the neighbors. So I say hi and we talk, and she's like, oh yeah, this place is great, and I've been here like 3 years, and I don't intend on moving anytime soon. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's great to hear. And then a couple of weeks go by, and sometimes we would see her occasionally walking her little doggies, and we would say hi and chat. But then one day she's like completely gone, and I don't really know whatever happened, but yeah, she apparently moved after all. As our relationship kept like progressing, Hunter and I also realized like we're gonna need more space eventually, and then about halfway through the year, he rescued this little kitten that was climbing a tree outside, and we named her Blanket, though usually we call her Blankecita. And of course, at first she was sweet, but then she has proven that she can be pretty bad if she wants to be. To be honest, I'm not always so sure we were like ready to have this little baby in our lives, but she did just appear to us, so that next summer, we both moved into a completely different apartment complex. It was still like literally right down the street from the first apartment, and with this one I feel like I have a lot more memories, I guess, because I was actually living there like full-time instead of part-time. It was still a one-bedroom apartment, but it was already a lot bigger than the previous apartment, and it had its own washer and dryer connected, which Hunter really needed because he just goes through a lot of clothes during the week for work. And for a while that was great, and at first it was even kind of weird for us because we weren't used to like being in separate rooms and not being able to see each other, as weird as it sounds. When we first moved there was also this like random traffic cone that kept getting left in front of our building, and I wish I had a picture of it, but I forgot to take one. But I drew this like set of anime eyes on a sheet of paper, and Hunter taped it to the traffic cone, so it was actually really cute. Another little prank I pulled was like, I wrote this letter and made it seem like it was from the leasing office and printed it out and put it on our door so Hunter would find it when he came home later that day. And it was like, warning to all tenants, there's a very mysterious sexy man that has been seen around the complex and authorities are working hard to detain him, or something like that. And I was basically describing him, so I don't know, I thought it was pretty funny, and he was like so confused at first because it was very official looking. But anyway, yeah, there was also this little section in the middle of the complex where there were some woods, and even further back there was this like retention pond thing, and I would walk around it all the time. I'd see people fishing and also see this like huge beautiful blue heron hanging around it. The parking lot was also not too rough, so I could roller skate on it, and I do that occasionally and talk to the little neighborhood kids who were also skating or riding their bikes around. Sometimes the kids were the only people that would actually say hi to me, and it's not like I was trying to make best friends with everyone, but you know, sometimes if I saw someone while I was walking, I'd smile, give them a little quick hi, but like half the time the people there would just straight up ignore me or look straight through me. And that's something I thought about a lot living there, like how there's just not a sense of community almost anywhere, even though we all live there. I don't know if it's just like the postmodern age or whatever, or really since COVID that this has stood out a lot more. But I'm not gonna lie, it kind of depressed me a lot, and I tried not to focus on it, but it did sort of highlight to me just how disconnected people are and how we are just so unfriendly with each other. And yet, here we are all living in this basically shared space, so like, why wouldn't you try to know who's around you, even just a little bit? Like, I don't know if one day you need help or I need help, I wanna freaking know who you are. My actual neighbors weren't like this though. We talk here and there and they were pretty chill. But then, of course, we have yet to talk about the more disruptive people. This apartment complex was noisy as fruck for some reason. Like, I remember the first time waking up there, it was actually really quiet and I heard some birds chirping outside, but little did we know it was going to be really noisy from there on out. One night at like 3 a.m. there was like this daughter and her mother, I think, and they were moving groceries out of the car, but then they started like fighting over the groceries and throwing them all over the place. And again, this is all happening at 3 a.m. And then about halfway through the year, this like new guy moved in downstairs and he owned this bright green kind of sport looking car. I honestly don't know what this guy did because he would always be home during the day, But then at like 6 in the morning, he would rev up his car and freaking fly out of the parking lot. And he'd also do the same thing really late on the weekends and just drive up and down the street. I started trying to park my car directly in front of our building so that green car guy couldn't park there. And if he did rev up his car, it'd be like slightly less loud for us. I like to think everyone else in the complex as a collective was like on the same page with me because they would also try to occupy those front spots as much as possible. Another thing about this particular apartment complex, I felt like a lot of people in it had dogs except for us. Like, we just had Blinkasita, who I had actually harness trained, and sometimes I would take her for little walks outside. But then I realized, basically, there were just too many people that had dogs, and that could potentially be really bad, so we kind of stopped doing that. And there was just also freaking dog poop, of course, because people just didn't want to pick up after them, so that was really annoying too. So for the past 2 months now, we have been living in this new home that has 2 bedrooms now and a huge downstairs. So now I have a sort of separate room for my computer and art stuff. And while it is a good 20-30 minute drive sometimes from my jobs in the main city, I still absolutely love it and I feel really grateful for it. I think Hunter and our kitty feel the same way as well. We even have a little yard and it's completely fenced in and the fence is really tall too. So I've been able to take Blinkasita on some of those little harness walks. Usually she just likes to sniff around and explore a little and look at the grass anyway. We also have this like huge spider that's in the bushes out in the front, and I want to say it's called a banana spider. It's kind of become our secondary like little pet in a way, so we just try to keep an eye out for it and make sure it's doing okay. But yeah, even from like a creative standpoint, I find it much more comfortable to work on my projects and do my art streams here. The house is still in a little neighborhood, but it's kind of out in the country, so generally it's very quiet and peaceful. I definitely feel that coming home is like an escape from all the craziness and stress of work and traffic and the like city life or whatever. I'm pretty excited to continue living here with Hunter and our kitty and seeing what the future brings us, but also what kind of art and what kind of videos I'll be able to make. I've also been thinking about trying to seek out like a little club or some kind of activity to do here, since the community is a lot more tight-knit. I've yet to explore that kind of thing, but hopefully I can do that soon. And this happened just like the other day, but we haven't had a next door neighbor ever since we moved here. And I thought like, okay, kind of weird, right? Because there is like some yard maintenance people that are working here every other week. So the house next door is still being kept up with, but no one seems to live there. And then one day, Hunter and I were on our way to meet some of his friends to hang out, and we saw a guy moving stuff in and out of the house that's been empty this whole time. So I was like, oh, are you moving in? We're right here next door. And the guy's like, oh no, so my brother-in-law stayed here and he passed away. And I was a little shocked, like no disrespect of course to the guy and his family, but I guess I just wasn't expecting that. And in my head I was like, wait, so he was in the house this whole time? I think the guy moving the stuff, I think he saw that I was pretty taken aback because I was like blinking at him. And he was like, oh no, he hasn't been in this house in over a year. We're just getting his stuff moved out now. And I didn't like pry any further, of course, but we offered our condolences and then we headed out. But yeah, the rest of the night I was like, oh my god. And I'm actually kind of adding this after I've pretty much already recorded and edited everything. But something I realized I didn't even get to touch on is like just how hard it is to move away from a place you've lived. I've not moved around a whole lot during my life. I know there are people that move a lot because of like work or their family life and stuff like that. But even as an adult, and even though I was moving within like a 30-minute driving distance, it was still really hard. And yes, it's like the new homes were an upgrade and I was moving away from like, I don't know, something noisy or too small. But I literally cried each time we moved because I just think about all our little moments and memories, and it just hits me like I'll probably never be back in the same room again. I don't know, maybe I'm just dramatic and I still think about it, and I even consider how I might feel the same way about this new home, But yeah, I'm trying to not like preemptively grieve things too much either in my life, because, you know, I do that with literally everything. But okay, I think that's pretty much all I got for now. I don't think my audio is quite as long as my footage, so there's gonna just be some like more flipping through the sketchbook and just some music playing for a few minutes if you want to catch the rest of the sketchbook tour. I hope y'all enjoyed seeing some of my old artwork while I sort of reflected on the past this way. Let me know if you did, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you guys again pretty soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.